Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank our panel members for your willingness to come before the committee and share your expertise and help us with our work. Thank you for the presentations that have been brought forward here. We appreciate that. Mr. Boudreau, as the former chair of the Subcommittee on National Security, we've worked with the National Security Commission on AI and trying to anticipate the opportunities that might present to heighten our ability to protect critical assets, but also there's an opportunity here for our adversaries who are not bound by democratic institutions. They are not bound by the checks and balances and the way that we in this country value personal privacy and human rights. China has basically full spectrum surveillance of their entire population. Russia, as well, is in that league. How do we engage and get the most out of AI? And we're in a competition here, right? We're in a competition. We don't want to cede this space to China. How do we keep up with them, or maintain a lead in this area, and ethically do due diligence in terms of our obligation to protect privacy rights and democratic ideals?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. Yes, we are in this competitive dynamic, but I think it's important that we don't let this competition allow us to lose sight of our core U.S. values and core ethical commitments. This is a key part of the legitimacy of our government and the credibility of the U.S. military and our ability to operate globally. I think ethics and the responsible deployment of military AI systems is really part of the U.S. strength. This is what allows us to work in multinational alliances with our NATO and other partners. And so in this way, a responsible and ethical commitment to deployment is itself a type of force multiplier. It's also, I think, what will allow the U.S. government, including the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security, to work with the technology company providers. A number of technology companies have themselves raised concerns about the responsible deployment of AI in a number of Homeland Security or international security contexts. And so I think it's important to ensure that the U.S. government maintains its commitment to ethical deployment of these technologies, to ensure that that partnership with technology companies will continue. I note that the Department of Defense has stated a set of ethical principles, including the traceability, the governability, the reliability, and the equity of military AI systems. And I think there's still some work to do in the implementation of those principles, but the U.S. can be a leader in this space by showing that there's ways to deploy these types of systems ethically and responsibly.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to read a book called Kill Chain. It was by one of, I think, John McCain's staffers, and talked about the need to have a human in the chain of some of these weapon systems. Mr. Nawabi, you seem to be familiar with that. How do we, I mean, it's almost a given that countries that have less accountability for leaders, such as authoritarian regimes like Russia and China, would have greater freedom to use a system that does not have a human in that chain of decision trees that would allow the use of that weapon. How do we protect ourselves? What countermeasures? What might we be able to adopt to face that dilemma? Mr. Boudreau and then Mr. Nawabi.
Yeah, thank you. I think maintaining, as the DoD itself has stated, appropriate levels of human judgment in the development and deployment of these technologies is really crucial, that there is a human that is making a decision about the deployment of technology and that they've actually tested and evaluated the technology to ensure that it's appropriate for the specific context. And so that in that way, there's a human that is actually accountable that can ensure that these technologies are used responsibly. I know that there are these pressures to reduce the level of human control, right? That might help, in some ways speed the ability to deploy these systems, but at what cost? And I worry about some of the risks associated with perhaps escalation or even proliferation of systems that operate outside of human control.
Thank you. And I would now turn to my colleague from